Good morning. Here we are again, looking at Genesis chapter 15. Chapter 15. I hope you got your coffee with you or something, and open your God's Word to Genesis 15:1, and we will begin. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, Don't, do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you and your reward will be great. Man, what a great thing there. Because remember, he already, as he was entering into Egypt, was afraid. He told his wife, "Tell him you're my sister and not my wife, so that they don't kill me." So fear was a part of his life, it appears. And God tells him, "Don't be afraid." Verse 2. But Abram replied, "O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all my wealth." Saying my servants are going to get all this because I don't have any kids. I don't have anybody to pass it down to. Verse 3. You have given me no descendants of my own. No one, so one of my servants will be my heir. 4. Then the Lord said to him, No, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir. 5. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, Look up to the sky and count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have. 6. And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. You see what that verse 6 says? And he believed that God would do what God said he would do. What a place for us. That's where many of us fail right there, is the fact that God has given us his promise. He's given us his word all through the scriptures, and yet we fail to believe. And he believed, and he was credited for righteous at that very moment, meaning he believed in God. 7. The Lord told him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Gladnites and gave you the land as your possession. 8. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that I will actually possess it? He knows that there's others living there. He knows that he's not in charge. He knows others are in charge. So he says, How am I going to know? Verse 9. The Lord said to him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. 10. So Abram presented all these to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid halves side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. 11. Some vultures stooped down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. Verse 12. As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. 13. Then the Lord said to Abram, You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be opposed as slaves for 400 years. 14. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and at the end they will come away with great wealth. 15. As for you, you will die in a place and be buried at the ripe old age. 16. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to a land for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. See, God already knew what was going to happen. He knew how bad they were going to get, and he knew that eventually they would come to a place where God destroyed them and destroyed. And you say, well, he's supposed to be a God of love. How can he do that? Rejection has consequences. Sin has consequences. Sin always brings death. And we have to realize that and remember that. And also, it brings accountability and it brings a day of judgment. 17. After the sun went down and darkness filled, Abram saw the smoke of the fire pit, and the flaming torch passed between the halves of the carcass. 18. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants all the way from the borders of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, the land now occupied by the Kenites, Canaanites, Kibonites, Hittites, Pezrites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, all the Nites. And he says, I'm giving it to you. Let's look at 16. 16:1. So Sarah, Abraham's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. Verse 2. So Sarai said to Abram, the Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. 3. So Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram settled into the land of Canaan. 4. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. 5. Then Sarai said to Abram, this is all your fault. I love how that got turned around, right? This is all your fault. Though she initiated it, though she brought it, that's the way it often works. Sin always accuses somebody else. It always affects other people, right? I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me. 6. Abram replied, look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit. Then Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. 7. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside the spring of water in a wilderness along the road of Shur. 8. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? Man, what an important question. Stop and pause that for a minute. The Lord asked her, where'd you come from? Where are you going? The Lord already knew. He already knew where she came from. But now he needed to know, what is your intentions? We have to always answer that question in our relationship with God. Where are we going when we run, when we try to do other things, when we try to find ourselves? He goes on to say, I am running away from my mistress, Sarai. She replied. 9. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. 10. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. 11. The angel also said to her, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. And the Lord has heard your cry of distress. Sounds kind of familiar with the Egyptian or the Israelites' cry of distress very soon as they're in Egypt. 12. The son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as wild donkeys. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. 13. Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, you are the God who sees me. She also said, have I truly seen the one who sees me? 14. So that will be his name, which will mean well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kishba and Bebard. So Hagar gave Abram the son, and Abram named him Ishmael. 16. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. God had promised him a son, Abram. He wasn't, his wife Sarai wasn't having one. He's 86 years old, well past childhood birth in the time, but nothing's impossible with God. But what we see here is a man and woman who's trying to help God accomplish his plan and purpose. We always have a problem when we try to help God do what he wants to do, and it causes nothing but more problems, which we'll see as we continue reading later tomorrow in Genesis chapter 17, God willing. I hope you have a great day. I hope you take time to think about the things we learned today and understand the importance of obedience to God no matter the time frame. God bless you. Have a great day.